Lesson 7, Level 1, Sprites. We start off with our question that says, how can we use sprites to help us keep track of lots of information in our programs? So it says, in order to create more interesting and detailed images, the class is introduced to the sprite object. So this would be like your characters in your games. This would be, some of your sprites could be objects that your characters could bounce into. So sprites could be something like your character moving throughout your game, but a sprite could also be the platforms that your characters are bouncing on, or it could be like little laser bullets, or it could be the path that your character walks on. Sprites can really be about anything that you can draw. And so that's what we're going to kind of get into. So this is where we get into like the real game creation by using sprites. But we're going to start at a very basic level first, and then that's going to get more complex as we go on through each level and throughout each lesson. So this is just a very basic introduction to sprites. Yeah. So your character, we will eventually program a character that can jump using certain keys, like your space bar. It could jump, and we can create it so that the character can bounce off of objects to where if it hits, say, that it jumps up and it bounces onto a platform, and we want that platform to act like a trampoline, we could make our character bounce off of that platform instead of landing on it like a hard surface. Okay? Yep. Absolutely. So this one says, lesson starts with a discussion on the various information that programs must keep track of, then presents sprites as a way to keep track of that information. Students then learn how to assign each sprite an image, which greatly increases the complexity of what can be drawn on the screen. So we've got this dot notation, and that's the way sprites properties are used in GameLab, by connecting the sprite and a property with a dot. Okay, so in this example, or in some of the other examples, we'll see what those properties mean. And it'll make more sense once we see one, so I'm not going to get into the details now. A property, as a vocabulary term, is a label for a characteristic of a sprite, such as its location and appearance. So a sprite is a character on the screen with properties that describe its location, movement, and look. Okay, so we're going to use this draw sprites command, and then we're going to also be able to use this red command that creates the sprite as a variable, and then it does this equals create sprite, so it actually creates the sprite itself. And then it gives it an X and a Y coordinate, a width, and a height. And we'll get into all of that here in a bit. So go ahead and press continue. Loading the page. Oh shoot, of course I pressed reset or refresh because I'm not patient, and it was already loaded. All right, level 2, exploring sprites. This program uses some new blocks that you haven't seen before. So it says, read the code and discuss what or how you think it's going to work. Change some lines and see what happens. What do you think each line is doing? So if I press run, I've got this apple and this carrot. Okay, and there's nothing changing if I press reset and run. So if we break this down line by line, I'm going to break this down, and then we're going to actually practice it in the next levels. But I just want you to understand what's going on here. So I'm going to explain once and then re-explain the next time we use it every time, and hopefully by the end of the lesson today that it all sinks in eventually. So what's happening here is on line 1, just like before when we created a variable, we need to create a variable for our sprite to go into. So pretty much think of the variable as a container, and what we need to do is we need to put a label on the outside of that container. And then what we're doing here, so var fruit, think of as we've got a container, and I just grabbed a label maker and I labeled the front of the container fruit, spelled exactly like it's spelled here. Then after this equal sign, that's going to be what I choose to put inside of my container. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sprite at an x value of 100 and a y coordinate of x coordinate of 100, y coordinate of 200. So I'm saying go ahead and take that jar that I just labeled fruit and place it on the grid at 100, 200. Okay, so I've just got this empty spot sitting out on the field pretty much at 100, 200, and it's got a label on it that says fruit. On line 2, what I'm doing is I'm saying I want to take that fruit, that jar that says fruit on it, and I'm going to set the animation, or what I'm going to then turn that jar into is, and then I have this drop down here, is an apple. So I'm saying instead of this blank jar that says fruit at 100, 200, I want to turn that jar into an apple. Okay, so that's what line 2 is saying, or pretty much doing. And then we do that same thing all over again on line 3. I have my blank space or my blank jar. I'm going to take that variable and I'm going to name it vegetable. So I put vegetable on the outside of it. I'm going to place that blank jar at the x coordinate 300 and the y coordinate 200. And then line 4 is saying, take that jar that we labeled vegetable and put a carrot inside of it. Okay, and change what's showing there to be a carrot. And if we click this drop down here on those, we can see that we've done that. Okay, and then at the very end on line 5, it's saying, okay, what line 5 is doing is it's saying, go ahead and draw that now. Go ahead and show that on the screen. Draw sprites is saying you pretty much have it's like you're in theater and the curtains are closed. And number 5, on line 5, it's saying, open up the curtains and let's see what we've done so far. Okay, so it's drawing everything, or it's showing them or displaying them would be a way to look at it. Okay, so we're not actually doing anything on that level. That was just to explain what's going on. So we can just press finish. And we'll skip past this one, so press continue on the video. All right, creating sprites. So var sprite equals create sprite, that purple line, is creating that new sprite and assigning it to a variable. Okay, assigning it to that jar with the label on it. Okay, the default name is sprite, so you'll want to change it to something more meaningful. Okay, drawing sprites. Sprites only appear on the screen when you draw them there. So calling that yellow draw sprites will draw all of the sprites that you've created onto the screen. Like I said, it's pretty much opening up those curtains so that we can see what we've drawn. This program includes comments that let you know where to place your code, but otherwise it's blank. Your program should look like the image on the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to add var sprite equals create sprite 200, 200 under the comment creating sprites. Okay, so underneath line 1, we're going to go to our red sprites drawer where it's got this purple sprite equals, and we're going to drag that out to underneath that comment on line 1 where it says creating sprites. So it's going to be on line 2. Okay. So we're not actually going to change anything because it says leave it as var sprite equals create sprite 200, 200. So what it's doing is it's taking that jar, like I said before, putting the label on the front of it called sprite, and it's placing it on our grid at 200, 200, so in the very, very center. Okay, it says you can ignore the yellow triangle warning for now. It's just telling you that you haven't used your sprite yet. So we've created that jar, but we haven't actually put anything in it or used it yet. Okay, so in order to use it, we have to either just draw it by using this yellow block, or we have to use another block that we're going to learn here in a little bit. So in this instance, we're just going to draw it. Okay, so we're going to go to our yellow drawer that says world and grab this draw sprites block and drag it underneath line 4. So it's going to be on line 5. Okay, so when I press run, it's just going to create this blank box that's 100 by 100 for width. Okay, and that's just the default sprite. So if later on in your code, if you see a blank gray square show up on your screen, that means that you haven't assigned an animation, or in our past analogy, you haven't put anything in the jar. Okay, so on this next level, we're going to find out what we're going to put in that jar after we've created it, we've labeled it on the front, and now we need to put something in. Okay, and what we're going to put into it is going to be a drawing. Okay, and that's going to be our sprite or our character. So go ahead and press finish. All right. Level 5 says debug. This program should create 2 new sprites, one on the left of the screen, one on the right, but it's only drawing one. You don't need to add any code, just rearrange the code already present to make sure that both sprites show up like the picture on the right. What do I need to change here? Correct. Yep. So I need to create my sprites first, which is with the purple code, and then draw them. Okay, so great. Exactly right, Charlie. So I need to just grab that draw sprites, that yellow code, and drag it to the very bottom, and then press run. Okay, now both my squares appear on my screen. So I thought we were going to change that in this level. I'm hoping that we change that here in this next one. We need to add in one more line of code, and they haven't given it to us yet to fix. But we'll get those yellow triangles to go away here shortly, I'm thinking, on this next level. I will tell you as soon as I see code. Yep, so this one will get them to go away. Or we could. So this program draws 4 sprites on the screen, and one of them has an animation from the animation tab. It says run the code to see what happens. Look in the animation tab to see what animations are available to you. Feel free to alter your animations or choose a new one, and then use the set animation command to change the look of your other sprites. So if I press run, I've got 4 that didn't get assigned, and then I've got this pink alien. Okay. First thing we're going to do is let's take a look at all of the sprites that are available to us. Okay, so where we're going to go is up in the top left here. There's this code tab, which is going to be this current view that we're in, and then there's going to be this animation tab. Okay, so if we click on that animation tab, I can see all of the different animations that I currently have and any that I want to add in. So my recommendation is that you play around with this tab when you have some time, because there's a lot to it. Okay, so if I wanted to, let's say I want to add another animation, I just click on this plus new animation, and it will give me another animation. So I'm going to click on this little plus down here underneath the red plane. And what's going to happen is it's going to pull up this giant animation library of all of these preset animations that I can have. Okay, I could draw my own, and it'll give me a blank canvas where I can just draw my own. So if you want to make your own characters, that's where you're going to go. Okay, if you want to start with an image of something, say I want to start with like a gloomy cloud, or I want to start with a character or an image or a picture of a character from a video game that I already like, I can download an image and upload it on that second option. So first option in purple, that draw your own, is a completely custom object or a completely custom sprite. The second one is you're starting with an image that you've downloaded, and you're going to edit it from there. And you can always edit any of them. The rest of them are all just categories of different animations that you can use. I like to go into the vehicles because one of my favorite games growing up was Galaga, and the spaceships that were in that game I really liked. So I like, as soon as I see that spaceship there on vehicles, that's the first one that I like to go to. So I click on vehicles. I see all these different ships that show up. This motorcycle here reminds me of Tron. All sorts of cool stuff. So I'm gonna grab this player ship 1 blue. You can pick whatever one you want. It doesn't really matter. We're not gonna use this one. But we could. So if you pick one, let's go ahead and make one of the 4 that we're going to add, one of the ones that we've created or that we're adding in now. So remember when I said that we have that label on the front of our jar? It's very, very important that the label on the jar, or that variable that we've created on that jar, is the same name that we put in our animation tab. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, I'm kind of starting backwards here, is I'm going to delete underneath it where it said player ship 1 underscore blue underscore 1. I'm going to click in there and delete all of that. And I'm just going to call it player. So like a game, or like a player, game player. I'm going to call it player, and then I'm going to call it 1. And I left player in all lowercase, and then I put just the number 1 after it. You can name yours whatever you'd like. And my recommendation is that you make it something kind of simple. Okay, so once we've chosen an animation from the animation tab, we click underneath it and we give it a name. We give our sprite or our character a name, one that's relatively easy. Okay, so I named mine player 1, and I'll have to remember that. But I can always come back to this animation tab if I forget. Okay, so up at the top where we went to the animation tab, now we're going to go back to our code tab. So go up to the top left and click code. Okay, so personal preference now. I like to keep my purple code, this purple line on line 1, I like to keep that with my red line of code that's going to say what's going in the jar. Think of the purple code as the jar with the label on it. I like to make my red line of code that's going to tell me what I'm putting in my jar. I like to put them right next to each other. Okay? So if that seems easier to you, I would recommend doing that as well. Okay? So this says top left sprite. It says var top left sprite on line 1. I'm going to start at the top. And it's saying we're going to create this at 100, 100. So it's creating it up in the top left corner. What I need to do is go to my Sprites tab and click the second option here. It says sprite.setAnimation label. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that underneath that first line and put it on line 2. Okay? What we need to make sure that we're doing here is I need to make sure that my purple line that says top left sprite, that label matches line 2, which is going to be what I put in the jar. Okay, so it says top left sprite with a capital L in left and a capital S for sprite, but top is lowercase. So right on line 2 where it says sprite.setAnimation, where it says sprite, I have to change that to top left with a capital L, sprite with a capital S. And as soon as I type that in correctly, my yellow triangle on line 1 and on line 2 both go away. Okay? Now, I'll let you type that, so I'll give you a second here. Now that I've got both of my labels correct, my one that's on my jar containing my sprite, which is my variable, and I've matched that with what I'm going to put in it, now I can choose what I want to put in. So on line 2, this drop down arrow that says animation underscore 1, if I click that drop down, it's going to give me all of those animations, whatever I named them, it's gonna give me all of those as an option. And I can just click one. So let's say I want to do my player 1 right now. I just click player 1. The reason that I said that it's important that you know what you named your sprites is so that when you click that drop down arrow, you know which one you're picking. Okay? So I know player 1 is my blue ship. Okay? Because I remember naming it player 1. So now if I press run, player 1, that ship, shows up in the first spot. Okay? We're going to do the other two really quick because we need to in order to pass the level. So what do I need to do to get the yellow triangle to go away from line 3? What line of code do I need to drag out? Yep, I need to put the label one underneath it, the sprite.set animation label. Okay, so I'm going to go to my sprites drawer, grab out that sprite.set animation, and put it underneath line 3. So it'll be on line 4. Then I have to name it. Instead of sprite, it needs to say top right sprite with a capital R in right and a capital S in sprite. So top right sprite. And then I can choose whatever animation I want. I just click the drop down arrow. But I know I did it right when both my yellow triangles go away. I'm going to choose the flybot. You can choose whichever one you want. And then I'm going to do something similar for the next one. I'm going to drag out that sprite.set animation, name it what is on line 5, which is bottom left sprite with the proper capitalization. And like I said, I know I did it right when my yellow triangles go away. I click my animation drop down and I'm going to click plain red 1. So now when I'm done with mine, I shouldn't have any yellow triangles. My spelling should be correct. And what I like the most is that we've kept them together. We kept this variable and the animation that we're setting it to right next to each other on each one. Okay. If we need to come back to this one, you can always open up the Loom link that I'll have on Google Classroom. And then I usually upload them to YouTube as well. So you can go ahead and always play it back if you didn't quite catch all of that spelling or anything like that, okay? But for the sake of time, we're going to continue on because I want to be able to get done with this lesson before we get done with the school day. So we're going to continue past the video. Come to level 8 here. Move this back. All right. It says this program draws 3 sprites to the screen, but it's not working yet. The wrong sprite is in front, and one sprite's animation isn't showing up. Run the code to see what happens. We run the code. Got this ice cream in the wrong spot. I've got the get ready is behind it. The Coke can is not showing up. It's not Coke, it's cherry crab or something. So fix the 2 problems. Just like shapes, sprites are drawn in the order that they're created. So if I want them to show up in the correct order and I want something to show up in front, I need the text or the message get ready to be drawn last, right? So what I need to do first, because I have get ready on the front here, I'm going to highlight, left click and drag, and I'm going to select lines 1 and 2 because that's my message. And I'm going to drag that to the very bottom, but right above draw sprites, because it can't be after draw sprites, otherwise it won't get drawn at all. Okay, so I'm going to drag it so that it's right above, that yellow highlight is right above draw sprites, the yellow line. So I should have my message code, my purple message code on line 5 and my red message code on line 6. Again, I just left click and drag and highlight both of them and then drag them down to right above draw sprites. Okay. The next thing we're doing here, so if I press reset and run, now I see that my code is in front here. Okay. If I look next, my dessert is being drawn on the wrong side of the screen. So if I look, there's 2 ways of fixing it. So I've got this. Well, let's see. Let's fix this error first here. So if I look on line 1, I've got variable drink, and I've created the sprite at 100, 200, which would be on the left side of the screen. And then my drink.setAnimationSoda soda is being created. Okay. So if I look, I'm going to look at something here real quick. Okay. So the first thing that I want to fix is this yellow triangle. Okay. What it's saying is that dessert is defined, but it's not called in my program. And if I look on line 4, it says drink again. And I want to call my line that says dessert. So on line 4, where it says drink.setAnimation, I need to change that to dessert and make sure that you use 2 S's. Okay? If I press reset and run, it fixes my entire program. What was happening there is on line 1 and 2, it was creating this soda can on over here on the left side of the screen, but then on line 3 and 4, it was drawing the ice cream cone over the top of it. So it couldn't find where we were drawing the drink. Okay, so really all we needed to do was move the message code down to the bottom and change line 4, change where it said Sprite to dessert. Is really all we changed. Okay, so we can press finish there. All right, it says match the code to the image that it will produce. All right, I'm gonna have you guys help me out with this one. This first one, it says background sky blue, variable dog create sprite, dog.setAnimation to a corgi, variable elk create that sprite, elk.setAnimation draw sprite. Which one is this going to produce? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Correct. Good work. Okay. Background, sky blue, draw sprites, all of this stuff below it. Which one is this going to do? 1, 2, or yep, it's going to be number 1. Okay, because it's drawing the background and then it's drawing the sprites. So nothing's going to show up because all of the sprites being created haven't been created yet and we're already drawing. So it's going to draw the background and that's it. What about this one? Background, yep, because it's this purple creating the sprite and we're drawing it. So all it does is creates that gray box and it didn't set an animation to it. So it's just going to be a gray box. Okay, whereas this one, it creates that variable, that jar for the dog to go into, sets the animation to the dog, then draws the sprites, and then creates the elk stuff. So only the dog one's going to show up because we put the draw sprites in the middle. Okay. We'll press submit there. Whoa. Wild. Ooh. Let's do B. Oh, is that our assessment? No, it's skill building. Okay, good. All right, last one before our assignment. Errors are being hit. Whenever we try to run our program, it looks like something is wrong with our animations. Can we try and fix it? Whoa. All right. Sprite 1, Tyrannosaurus, unable to find an animation named Tyrannosaurus. So if I look in my animation tab, I've got this Tyrannosaurus as option 2. So if I click my drop down and click Tyrannosaurus, they just spelled Tyrannosaurus wrong. So if I click my drop down and click the Tyrannosaurus option that's here, they typed out Tyrannosaurus in the double quotes and they didn't spell it correct, so it didn't work. Okay. Sprite 3, it says unable to find an animation named sun. Please make sure the animation exists. So if I go into my animation tab and I click sun, I notice that sun here is spelled with a capital S. And if I go back to my code, they typed in sun with a lowercase s. This is a perfect example of code where you should always use the drop-down arrow because it'll always be spelled exactly how you spelled it in the animation tab instead of you trying to type it in. Okay, so always use that gray drop-down arrow in order to type in your animation name. Okay, and then this one here, we can't figure out what grass2 is. Perhaps you meant the string grass2 with quotes. Yeah, so if I click the drop down arrow again, I need to click the grass2 with the double quotes. They forgot the double quotes around grass2. So I press reset and run. Grass3, unable to find an animation named grass3, make sure the animation exists. I'm going to go to my animation tab, scroll down. There's no grass3, there's just grass1, grass2, and grass4. So I'm going to change the name of grass4 to grass3. Or what I can do is I can come out here to the drop down arrow and grass4 would have shown up and I could have clicked that one. So if I press run now, my picture works correctly. So I changed Tyrannosaurus, I changed sun, I changed grass2, and I changed grass4 to grass3 in the animation tab. Or you can change grass3 to grass4, totally doesn't matter as long as you get it to work. Okay, so big takeaway from that level, always use that gray drop down arrow when you're setting your sprites so that it's spelled correctly. Okay, we'll press finish there so that we have a little bit of time to work on our assignment before we're done for the day. Go ahead and press finish. All right, create your own sprites. Use what you've learned to create your own sprites. The example is just one way to complete the level, but decide for yourself what you want your sprites to look like. Go to the animation tab and add at least 2 animations to your project. So you're going to go, first thing you're going to do is go to the animation tab and click the plus 2 different times and create 2 new animations. They can be whatever you'd like. Okay, I know that might be difficult for some of you to be given that free reign, but this is your project, your assignment. You can pick whatever one you want. If you want an example, you can use this one over here on the right of the crab, the fork, and the knife. Okay. In the code tab, create at least 2 sprites in 2 different places on the screen. Okay, so after you've created your animations in the animation tab, you need to put them on the screen anywhere you'd like. Okay, it does not matter. Okay, and then assign each sprite a different animation. Okay, so you're literally going to have, you would have this var sprite, set animation, var sprite, set animation, and a draw sprites. At the very least, at the very minimum, this is what you should have, but obviously it can't be like this because then you're just going to have 2 random sprites that are gray boxes. Okay, you need to set the animation to something. Okay, but this would be how your code would be laid out at the very minimum. Okay, obviously different variables, different numbers, different sprites, different animations, things like that. Okay, so 2 sprites, 2 different locations, can be any sprite that you want it to be, and you'll start in the animation tab by clicking that plus and setting it to be either 2 different ones in the library, or you can draw your own or upload an image, totally whatever you'd like. Okay, once you're done with that, screenshot the code, turn it into Google Classroom under CSD Unit 3 Lesson 7.